Welcome everybody to Chaps, Many Cultures, episode 177. We are back again on another day, another beautiful day. And we are talking today about short-term assignments as opposed to long-term assignments. And we'll delineate the two and separate those in our experience. Yeah, short and long-term, because we've really observed that there is a fundamental difference in how we prepare and interact in these assignments. So stick around and we'll get into it. Yes, welcome back. The show, the number one show, global show, the number one global show, daily show of the business of culture and the culture of business. We could add more superlatives to this if we really tried, couldn't we?
the number oneest show.
The number oneest. The number oneiest of the number oneest shows out there. Absolutely. Welcome, everybody. Yes.
With the nuttiest dudes who talk about culture and how it affects your business, how it applies to your business, and if you don't mind the culture, it will bite your butt kind of business. So that's why we're doing this. We're not, I mean, we're doing this for shits and giggles too. That's for sure. And yet we know that if you don't pay attention to these little things, they will affect your business in a way that you don't want to. So rather talk about it now and prepare for what's to come in global business than trying to piecemeal it back together after the thing broke, right?
Absolutely.
I'm being a bit extreme in my assessment here.
Absolutely. So if you do like what you hear and you want to interact with us, you can put your, please enter in the comments where you're tuning in from. If you're tuning in live, send us a message if you're tuning in on the replay. And also don't forget to subscribe to our channels if you're watching on YouTube, and you will be pinged and we will annoy you whenever we go live, which is every day. Again, the number one daily live stream show.
We won't annoy people. We simply will send them reminders, right? So you want to know when this is happening, don't you?
Absolutely.
If you're not subscribed yet, what's keeping you, I wonder?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So today's topic is short-term assignments, right? But how we've kind of seen the evolution from actually not too long ago, but maybe I would say as recent as, say, 6-7 years ago, when a lot of our clients, or my clients anyway, I mean, I'm just using my anecdotes here, is that my clients were heading off on 3 to 5 year assignments. These were assignments that had a good long-term goal. There was a great deal of preparation and intention that went into why the person was going, how they were going to be going, and what their ultimate goals and achievement checkpoints were going to be. Of course, and that seemed to change. I don't know about you, mate, but so for me, it just changed. It got to, like, people were in some instances like 4 and 6 months, if it was in response to, say, a change in leadership or a dynamic in a foreign office that they had to kind of backfill. So there's as short as that, and then we've got kind of 1 to 2, which is more, but which was kind of almost seemed to be trying to achieve what the 3 to 5 year assignment was going to achieve, but it was expected that it was going to be able to be brought in. So that's my anecdotes. What have you seen?
Well, I would agree that the length of the assignments has morphed to shorter. I'm sure there's a variety of reasons for that, and while I'm not a employee mobility expert per se, we work a lot with employee mobility companies, but I think one of the factors contributing to that is that visa regulations are constantly changing, and that volatility in the markets has been noticeable in the last couple of years. Market situation can change on a dime, so the predictability of expatriate assignments has become a bit different. I think the turnover circles or cycles appear to have shortened. And what I also recognize is that more and more younger professionals are being sent on these foreign assignments, where it used to be, when I started out in this work 15 years ago, it used to be more the, let's say, middle management to senior management positions that were the candidates who would receive cultural preparation training for a foreign assignment. These were people typically in their 40s, sometimes even in their 50s, typically couples with teenage children moving abroad. And there was this expectation almost that you would get 4 to 5 years to complete your mission, and that would also be something that the families would plan for with the children in the schools in the foreign system. So that seemed to have been the expectation. Now, I mean, just the training programs that I'm working on right now, these are people in their late 20s to mid 30s. Oftentimes they're singles, or if they're relocating with a partner, then they may not actually be married yet. They come with a completely different job description than the assignees that I worked with 15 years ago. They come with a very succinct mission: change this, do that, then go back home or go on your next assignment. And it also appears to me that these assignees, they don't expect to be away or in one location for more than 2 years. They expect to be finished with that change mission that they're sent for, and then maybe moving on to another foreign mission or being sent back to headquarters, so to say, or to the home country. So the expectation about that assignment seems to have morphed in a way as well. So that's been my anecdotal experience.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And that's a good point about the age group of the people we're working with. It has kind of tended to trend lower. And so I think in this case, does that mean that a short-term assignment is easier? Is it viewed easier? And I guess in some cases, it might be the rationale. And again, these are anecdotes where we haven't really, probably worth digging into in a deeper way in terms of strategically for different companies. But the idea that perhaps a shorter term assignment is easier, there is that perception, so that you can perhaps just kind of jump in, jump out, do what you need to do. You're a younger person, you've got kind of more resources, you're quicker off the mark, you're more agile, you're more open to ambiguity and change.
So, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
And it's probably I think it's definitely easier for the company managing the assignments, because now they are not, well, let's look at this. You're moving a family of 3, 4, 5 people with school to involve in that. Maybe there's 1, 2, 3 children who attend a school abroad. More often than not, the school situation is a private situation, because there's a special need for expatriate children linguistically and with maintaining their educational levels in the home country. It doesn't always have to be that way, but still, you're moving 4 or 5 people. That means the company sending these people on assignment is stomaching a larger amount of out-of-pocket expenses for home, for housing, whether it be rental, which is the case most of the time, or maybe even purchasing a home, school tuition and insurance and additional vehicle for the second adult in the household. There is a large amount of out-of-pocket expense for the assigning company, right? So if you have a 20-something, 30-something single that's going for 12, 24 months, you can cram them in a townhouse or in an apartment. They don't have the same level of expectation. There is no tuition. There's no kid stuff to take care of. For the company sending the expatriate, yes, that is easier. No, hands down. I wouldn't know what would make it, where there would be a potential for that being harder for the company. Now, I think it is harder on the assignee. They may be more agile and able to swivel on the spot into this new uncharted territory. But let's face it, cultural adjustment takes its time. No matter whether you're 25 or 45, you need to get used to this new way of being. You need to get used to your new environment. I'm working right now with a young Brazilian couple moving to Mexico. I think they're not married yet, so I'm not quite sure what the spouse's legal status will be for the duration of his assignment. But he's already recognizing the challenges. He's been there for a couple of weeks, and he knows he's up for a substantial challenge, and that's the reason why he's been sent there. That doesn't make it easier for him because it's a 2-year assignment versus a 4 or 5-year assignment. He needs to get the job done in that short window. How do you get up to speed in that new environment? That, I think, while the company might be saving money or resources, the assignee, the task for them, I think, gets a little bit harder in the short assignment. That's my experience. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I think so. And here's where we're kind of digging into this topic through the terms of maybe a 3-step plan. Maybe there's the beginning, there's the preparation for, which is fundamentally different than it is for a longer term assignment. So whereas a longer term assignment, you have kind of maybe a longer runway to build credibility, establish connections, maybe learn a little bit of the language, the local language, so that you can understand some of the contextual vernacular that might be used in the office setting. But that's obviously not going to take place if you're in a pretty short period of time. So this is kind of work that you can do beforehand, assuming that you've got some notice and you have perhaps maybe, at least 2 or 3 months to think about and prepare for. So that's the time. That's an important part of your preparation, where you have to intentionally reach out to perhaps any key people that you can identify in the office that you're going to, that you can establish a close relationship with, that can give you a little bit of an insight into how to best prepare. Perhaps identifying in your company people who have had an expat experience in that country. May not even be in your company, it might be in another company, but using that as a bit of a touchstone. Establishing kind of what is going to be your exact place in the hierarchy, if it is a hierarchical structure that you're going into. Is it, or it could be the other way, you're coming from a hierarchical structure and you're going into a very flat structure in the organization. So therefore you have to learn and adapt to those styles. So this is kind of work that you will have to do and invest in yourself ahead of time. We would hope that cultural training would play a part of that, because this is actually a great way to identify those questions or answer those questions for yourself as you're preparing into these new cultures. So that's just kind of 1 or 2 little tips that we would really stress on the clients, to say this stuff you have to do now. You've only got 18 months or 2 years in the country. Believe me, you are going to not have time to do this when you get there, or it is going to be a very short period of time, and you're going to make mistakes as you get there. So that's just 1 or 2 things. There's obviously more, but this is important. It is not about sitting back and like you might feel you've got enough to do anyway. You've already, you've got to kind of make arrangements for what's going to happen while you're away and all those kind of things. So it can be kind of a very stressful time of excited anticipation versus ultimate dread of what the hell am I getting myself into.
Well, and I think there's a potential trap here, right? So you're a mobility manager, you're a human resources person that is your touch point within the organization, managing all the aspects of your relocation to that foreign destination. They may think, well, whatever, it's only a 2-year assignment, you'll be able to handle that. We can basically shoestring much of that, and we've done that before. And sometimes your global mobility manager is also coming from a mindset of, back in the day we did 4 to 5 years and that was a logistic blah blah blah, and now we're doing this and so much easier. There's a trap you could easily fall into. The trap being that my company's taking care of me and I just need to get there, which, as Brett just outlined, is a fallacy. If you know you're going on a short-term assignment, you want to do as much homework as possible before you go. If there is a foreign language you need to brush up on or improve on, take the time that's available to you now. Whether that's only 4 weeks or 4 months or longer, doesn't matter. Start now. Do not delay that until you're in country. Trust me, you're not going to have the time to do it because you're there for 2 years for a reason, because your company expects you to crank it out in 2 years. There won't be much time left. Your brain is going to be on overload from day one. So the sooner you can start on that process, on brushing up on that language that you need to be more functional at the foreign destination, do it by whatever means available to you. And whether that's a lump sum you get from your company, then dedicate a certain portion of that to your language support. If your company's offering you a formal language learning tool, whatever resource, get that scheduled. Don't let that slip. Trust me. We've seen it so many times, and people come back after their assignment, no matter how long it was, they come home and they all say, I wish I had started with a language learning sooner.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't want to be that guy.
You don't want to be that person. You don't. Well, no. I mean, you can be you, but don't be that person. Right?
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
So, and then of course you get there, and as Christian says, you are really hitting the ground running, and this is a really crucial time. So you may not have had the ability to build, you don't have the runway, as we said before, to build credibility. So getting very, very, again, building on any connections you've been able to make ahead of time, establishing a housing situation that hopefully feels that you can make it feel like home. Right. Because short-term assignments, as we referenced before, you could go into a temporary living arrangement and corporate housing, which will always feel like a hotel, and whatever accoutrements you can take with you for those short period of time to make it at least homely for you is important. So that's a personal thing that we always talk about being important for your own well-being, that space away from the office, because short-term assignments can tend to be overwhelming for the damage it can do to life-work balance. Right. I'm here for a short time. I've got very, very stringent goals and goalposts to get to, different checkpoints along which the timeline has dictated my success. And so therefore that you find yourself usually pretty quickly behind time already. So you're constantly catching up with things. So yeah, these are just very strategic things you have to do on the ground, and you can use local networks. We often refer to internet organizations like Internations, even LinkedIn. LinkedIn's a great tool for professional networks and things like this to reach out to local people. So you're kind of you're still using your professional skills and networking but it's outside of your company, so that you can. It doesn't feel like you're at work every day.
Yeah, and I would also go, if there's something of that nature, use the bilateral chambers or any type of reciprocal economic development bodies that you can plug into. They tend to be great networking pools. What you definitely want to do, and no matter where in the world you are from, no matter where in the world you're going, if you don't have a pool of experienced expatriates or repatriates within your own company, look for somebody that is familiar with the situation on the ground. It could be a fellow expat with another company, could be somebody that you find via those networks that we mentioned, Internations, bilateral chambers, whatever it might be. Find what I would call a cultural mentor. There is one right there. That's actually Brett's business name, is the cultural mentor. Find somebody who is, and it could be Brett, it could be me, it could be somebody else. That's not why I'm harping so much on this. But what you want is somebody who's been down that trail before. You're going to blaze your own trail within your organization, no doubt about it. Would it be easier to follow some footsteps, to follow some markings in the ground ahead of you that somebody else has done the heavy lifting for you already, and you might be able to avoid a few of these obstacles and pitfalls because somebody else has already removed them and is gracious enough and willing enough to share them with you. Find somebody like that. And if your company is not able to do that because you're the first one they're sending, or because they don't know anyone out there, let that not be your excuse to stop looking for that. There's other avenues. Like Brett said, intonations, LinkedIn, find the Facebook groups or the WhatsApp groups in that country. There's multiple avenues, especially with social media now, where you can plug into these areas. And I see this. So I live in Atlanta, and I happen to be in a couple of these groups, expatriate groups pertaining to my location. And there's people popping up in these groups. Hey, I will be moving to your town or into that area 3 months from now. Can anybody hook me up with? So I see people following that advice that I didn't give them, but somebody else told them, or they're smart enough to do it on their own. So if your runway to establish credibility, as Brett said, your runway will be very short or non-existent. So find other avenues to establish it. If you have someone that is on the ground and can be your cultural mentor, that will buy you the credibility. You can borrow that credibility. You can serve on the coattails of that person's credibility. And that will help you establish your own network in a much shorter period. It may sound a little bit, old guys talking about. Guess why we're talking about this? Because we've been through this before. So not rocket science. However, if you don't do it, it's going to bite you in the butt. Trust me.
Yeah. That person can be your eyes and ears too, especially if there is a language barrier. They can be a really important interlocutor between you and the local culture. But they can also give you, building trust with that person or those people can also give you an insight into the local perspective of the office that you've come from. This is often the perspective and assumptions of what is expected from a headquarter office versus an international office or satellite office, vice versa, what the perception is of the headquarter office from the satellite office perspective. And so you can find yourself even as a representative of a headquarter office. Just using one scenario, you've landed as the expat in from the headquarter office, and just by the fact that you've come from there, perhaps there might be a barrier to you building trust right off the bat, because there is maybe a sense of mistrust or distrust or just basically not being sure of what your intentions are, what your goals are. That's why when you get there, really being able to get the other people that you're working with on board and aligned with what you have to achieve, opening up the information channels very, very quickly. I mean, we're talking about time-sensitive things here. We'll really get them invested. And, again, we get into cultural aspects of what motivates people in different cultures. Some cultures are motivated by just plain old, how big is a check, Others are you a part of the team? Are you part of the bigger picture and that kind of thing? So establishing and getting some knowledge and understanding about what that situation and dynamic is on the ground is really vitally important. And I would say that, these are not insurmountable challenges. They are challenges, but they are a good opportunity to build a muscle very quickly, which can then be deployed and exercised in an ongoing basis, even after the assignment. This is the key, is that a short-term assignment can still do as much to check that box for an organization to say, here's somebody who's gone off and done an assignment and had that experience. But now you've got to also be able to keep a good record of why is that experience been effective for you and how can you deploy it? And then we get into the repatriation process. So repatriation process, I mean, I guess it would be a little, some people say it's more difficult if you've gone from 5 to 6 or 7 years as opposed to 2 years. But it doesn't mean it's easier. It's just a different dynamic. There's a different set of circumstances that are in play.
And is it really? Because you and I, we both work with these let's call them short-termers or midtermers, whatever the terminology is. Let's say a 2-year assignment. A lot of the people that you and I work with independently on 2-year assignments, they don't go back home after the 2 years are up. So the repatriation may happen at a later point. Many of these younger 2-year, 1 year, 18 months assignments, they are moving onward to another destination. You and I, we just recently worked with another Brazilian couple who spent time in the US and is now being moved on to Germany, right?
Yeah.
That happens more often than you might think. There's a lot of these serial expatriates that go on assignment after assignment because they're in a situation where they're fairly youngish and they think, well, we're too young to settle down, or I'm too young to settle down at this point. Let's tack on another one. My company's offering me that opportunity, or I got hired by another company. They see what I did here and now they're sending me off there. So depending on the season in life that a short-term assignee is in, they may not even be ready yet to go, or their company may not feel that it's time for them to be repatriated. They want to, quote unquote, milk the expertise of that young professional as long as possible, and and take advantage of their agility and, let's say, unattachedness, right? And so the short-term assignment may come with a benefit that you'll have another short-term assignment coming after that right away.
Well, this gets into, like, how often do we see people who haven't traveled maybe for a good part of their life, and then they're all of a sudden exposed to the opportunity to travel, and then they get the bug, right? We call it the travel bug. And I think, as just listening to you speak there's that potential that a short-term assignment, especially if you feel, and I think it's invariable, I'm pretty sure that if we speak to most of our assignees that we work with that have done this process, there is a good degree of them who will say, well, I achieved probably about 75% of what I set out to do. So, and that may be professional, but it may also be personal, and it may be related to travel and so on and so forth. So that's a different aspect, as opposed to a kind of maybe a longer haul expat assignment where you feel like, okay, well, I've been away 5 to 7 or 8 years and that was great. I've really done everything I've needed to do. I've established myself as a global leader. Now I'm happy to go home, and I'm happy to settle back home and return to the nest. But short-term assignment can trigger quite a dynamic of, as you say, the serial expat that basically is off all over the place and never finds a home. And of course, if you then through that process are in the middle of having children with your partner, and you're just recently worked with a couple who's got 4 children, and 2 are born in one country and the other 2 are born in 2 other countries. I mean, and this is a very, very multicultural family that have children born in all these countries around the world. So, and they've really enjoyed the process, right? It's been a wonderful adventure. And
come
they
on,
said,
this sounds like it's an exemption almost.
Right? No, right? It's not. Yeah.
The most of the clients that I've worked with over the last 15 years, that their stories are very similar to what you just outlined. I'm thinking of a young family from Italy, from two different parts. The couple are from different parts of Italy. Moved to China. Their son was born in Italy, but was still in diapers as they moved to China. Went to international school in China, then moved to the US, and then they adopted a child in the US. And now their assignment, they have a follow-up assignment on the other coast. So they're moving from the East Coast to the West Coast, follow-up assignment. I could name you dozens of these stories where it does not typically end with one overseas assignment, because let's face it, those who succeed abroad are a valuable, well, I don't like the word commodity, because they're not a commodity. They're a valuable asset to their company, because not everybody is immediately successful in that global work. And the reason why some are, sure, they're predisposed to a certain degree. I would argue those who truly succeed in global work, they have given the opportunity and the resources and use their talent to build on their cultural competence. Whether that is via the help of people like Brett or myself or somebody else, they continuously work on that, and they recognize the relevance and importance of that. And the ones that don't succeed are those who think they can continue doing abroad what they've been doing at home until they realize that only gets them this far.
That's right. So that's it. Right. That's, you know, for what it's worth, that's our observation, our anecdotal observation of, and yes, we could probably tell stories all day. Maybe there's a book. Maybe there's a Two Chaps, Many Cultures book in the, I don't know, but we could.
Oh boy,
some of these stories.
Let's get started on that.
The stories are wonderful, right? I mean, they really are a rich resource of just experience where you can pass it on, and we continue to pass these stories on to the clients we use. We use the stories with, and they find them a great insight into saying, oh, so that's an interesting way of looking at these experiences through a different lens, and it sometimes is hard to project ourselves into these settings of other people's stories. But that's basically what we do when we read a book, right? When we read a book or we hear a story about something, we're kind of relating, where would I fit into this? Where would we kind of, how would I react in these situations? What, you know, how would I do things differently? Or maybe I'd do things the same, you know? So, yeah, I digress, but it's just an interesting, it's always been something that's always been in the back of my mind. So
I wouldn't say you digress. I think what this will lead into for the end of this episode is we want to hear from you. What has been your story? How was your expatriation story, whether it was short-term, long-term, no term, endless term, I don't care. What was your experience? how was your experience unique to you? What did you learn? Let us know. We're collecting these stories, and as Brett said, there might be a book, there might be some other way of capturing them, and yet they need to be told, because these stories carry nuggets of wisdom for those who come after us. And just like us, we're trying to be good mentors to those who go on these journeys. You can be a mentor as well. Let's capture those stories together. Here is how you get in touch with us. Let's do that.
Absolutely. So, as always, very grateful for you tuning in. Thank you very much. This is Two Chaps, Many Cultures, the world #1, just quietly, the world's #1 daily show about the business of culture and the culture of business. Please send in your comments and questions, and we'll be back, everyone willing, tomorrow. So, thank you very much. See you, mate.
Ciao for now.